Welcome to Alpha Coding Podcast, an all-access pass to medical coding and billing pro tips that help you start your week off smarter. And now, here is your host, Toni Elhoms.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Alpha Coding Podcast series. I am your host, Toni Elhoms. Welcome to episode 19 of the podcast. Today is May 11th, and the podcast has passed over 10,000 downloads, which is pretty epic. So thank you to all of our listeners for your support. We could not be here without you, so thank you. I'm really excited for today's episode because I invited a special guest to join us, and our guest was on a previous episode of the podcast. We're going to be discussing how to overcome adversity as a coding professional. So before we dive into our interview, it's time for your Monday dose of positivity, the Mindset Monday tip, and it's brought to you by Clara. Clara is a holistic, secure communication platform that specializes in telehealth and telemedicine. Take your practice virtual in a matter of minutes. Mention my code Alpha Coding for 10% off. Visit clara.com for more information. So our Mindset Monday tip is all about the importance of having the right mindset. And I truly believe that having the right mindset can make or break your success. So the quote I want to share with you says, "Our greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another." And this quote could not be more true because stress is toxic to any environment. Physically, mentally, emotionally, it's just bad for you. But with the right mindset, which takes a lot of work on the back end and time and effort to really program your mind correctly, you can channel your stress for something positive and purposeful. So control your mind and you will control your life. I hope that brings you some positivity. So our guest for today is Victoria Moll from Contempo Coding. Her awesome YouTube series drops new episodes every Wednesday and features great topics about all things medical coding. She was one of our most popular guests on the podcast so far. So be sure to check out episode 3 if you haven't heard it already. And I invited her back on the show today to discuss her best pro tips for overcoming adversity as a coding professional. So thank you for joining us today, Victoria.
Hey, thanks for having me, Toni. I'm really excited to be back on the podcast today. I got a lot of really great feedback actually from last time, people reaching out saying that I inspired them, and I actually have a lot more stories to share. So I thought it'd be a great idea if we collaborated again.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to have you here. So we're both considered medical coding influencers, which is a really cool title. And a lot of people think that we started out this way, but you and I both know that it's been a tremendous amount of hard work and sacrifices. Your journey to becoming a medical coder is really inspiring. Can you tell us more about the journey and how you got into the industry?
Okay, this is one of my favorite stories to tell, and I like to tell it anytime I'm speaking to a new group or like a new coding chapter, and it starts back when I was in high school. So in order to appreciate the whole journey, you have to understand what I was like as a teenager in high school. So I'm a tall person. I'm about 5'9.5" so I'm very intimidatingly tall. In high school, I probably weighed about 300 pounds. My hair was dyed blood red. It went down to the small of my back. I was very goth and no one understood me. I wore Marilyn Manson t-shirts and what were called bondage pants because they had all kinds of straps and hooks on them and spiked dog collars and fingerless gloves. And I was just very brooding and no one understood me. And I really didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't really, I guess maybe like a lot of people. To be honest, I'm not sure I really even liked myself very much. I wasn't a good student. Like I came from a very middle class family and the going to college and having a good career wasn't super impressed upon me. It just wasn't. So it's not that I wasn't smart. I didn't really, I guess, care and I didn't really get it. Like I didn't get the whole getting into a good school, having a good career thing. Now my mom, on the other hand, like she knew exactly what she wanted to do her whole life. I didn't. But my mom was a CNA and she had been doing that work since before you even need to have any kind of, certification or licensure. She was a CNA since she was a teenager, and that was her passion in life. She loved working with our aging population. My mom had been doing it for so long that she could tell when one of her older residents was going to pass away. And my mom was the type of person that if she knew one of her patients was soon to pass, like through the night or what have you, even if it meant that she would stay beyond her shift, she would stay with them and she would hold their hand because she never, ever, ever wanted anyone to die alone.
Wow.
So my mother was a saint. And one day my saint of a mother comes to me and she says, Victoria, have you ever thought about getting into medical coding? There's this lady that works at the home and she has her own office and she works pretty good hours. No one really bothers her. And she has these books. She has these reports or something she gets from the doctors and she sits there and goes through them and works with these books and assigns the codes. No one really bothers her. It seems like a pretty good job. But of course, I was a teenager. So I already knew everything, and I informed my mother that that sounded incredibly stupid and that she probably had no idea what she was even talking about.
Oh my gosh.
And ultimately, I wound up going to Reading Community College for web design. That was a big, big hobby of mine at the time. And I still use it to this day. Like I've always, since I was 13 years old, when I was coding in HTML, have always run my own website and always done my own blogs and stuff for a long period of time. So I thought, well, that may be a good career path to me. And thankfully at that point, once I got into college, like things were kind of coming together more. Like I was a much better student because I understood the importance. There was a lot more classes that I was really into. So I was doing pretty good. But again, like I didn't have any friends. I didn't really like myself. And I was a mess. I was just a mess. And it turns out that I was such a mess because I was clinically depressed. And it got to the point, unfortunately, that a couple classes short of graduating, people were really getting worried about me. And at that point, I had to make a very difficult decision. And then I decided to drop out of college to get myself straightened out, which I did, thank God. And I fully respect that not everyone can do that because of their situation or what have you. But I thankfully was able to just address it, get over it, and get over that whole hump in my life. But then of course, once I was done with that and I needed a job, like I needed a career, I needed a new focus in life. I was working, I think, doing clerical work and call center stuff. I was working as like a shopper services call center for a local department store. I was, an administrator there, but I really wanted something specialized and I really wanted something with some job security. At that point in my life, I was probably like in my mid-20s and starting to realize that maybe my mom was not so stupid after all. So I went back to Reading Community College and talked to them a little bit, and they got me enrolled in their medical billing and coding program. And I actually got a grant from the state. So I got one of their workforce improvement grants that completely covered my education there. I was extremely fortunate that at the time that I had finished and was on my internship, the hospital there had just formed their physician group. This was when, physicians were really starting to get bought up by these larger organizations. So they were hiring everyone like crazy, and I wound up getting a job there. And it just kind of escalated from there. Like when I got into medical coding, it was like there was something I was finally good at. And I hadn't felt that, I don't think ever. Like I hadn't felt like there was something that I could really excel at. And I took everything and just ran as far as I could with it. When they said we would pay for people to get certified, I jumped on it. I got certified. I got extra certifications. I moved my way up through the ranks, and it's just been so amazing to have come from a situation where people expected absolutely nothing of me to being a medical coding influencer. And I'm just so grateful every day. And that's why I take so much care in making sure that I give back to our industry.
Yes, that's so inspiring. And I love that you were so raw about your story, because I know it can be a little bit uncomfortable to be so vulnerable. So thank you for sharing that with us. And it really is inspiring. I know that people need to hear this. So there's a lot of highs and lows on this journey. In the digital age, most of us are accustomed to really just seeing the highlight reel. So can you share a professional low that you have experienced and what you have learned from that experience?
So one of the struggles that I had is when I started out, I, like a lot of people, didn't start out straight in coding. I started out in data entry, and I was so motivated that I wanted, to step up. I wanted to get the next step in the career ladder. So I applied for jobs in accounts receivable. And next thing I knew, I interviewed, things seemed to be going well, and then the job was taken down. I guess they decided they didn't need that position anymore. anymore. Then there was another job I was interested in, and I was thinking about it for a while, finally put in my application, and then I was told, oh, you're too late for submitting for that job because we have already extended offers, even though I found out later on they actually hadn't extended offers. They actually wound up going, I think, with their third choice for that position. So I didn't get that job. And then I applied for another job, knocked the interview out of the park and was told, maybe that you're not quite ready yet for that one. Okay. And then I applied for another job that looked good. And someone who was in a higher up administrative position decided that they were going to step down. So obviously they got that position. And then I just kind of looked at what I was doing and I applied for another job and I said, maybe can I have a raise? I'm doing a lot of great stuff here. You've put me on all these projects, and I think, it's time maybe to compensate me a little bit for all the extra work I'm doing, working on these conversions and so forth. And I was at that point sat down and told that if I wanted more money for the projects I was working on, that they would just take me off the projects. And
Wow.
that I should stop applying for jobs that I'm clearly not qualified for, and that I was complaining too much and it was making people uncomfortable.
Wow.
So I was told even that I shouldn't even be asking my boss at that point anymore for any job transfers because clearly I was not qualified for them. So, it's a hard thing to have to look at what's going on and assess, I've done everything I possibly could here. Like I've taken on the extra projects. I've looked for other jobs. I want to be able to learn and grow where I am, but it's not happening. And at that point, you do have to really assess, is this a time to walk away?
Yes. And I love, again, just your candor, because I've also experienced that same thing where you're doing all of the right things. You're a lot of times doing the work already, but there's politics and there's competing interests. And so they want you to continue to do the work, but they don't want to pay you for that work. It's really interesting to hear, that you've also gone through this, because it can be really discouraging for somebody that's like, I've done everything. Why can't I catch a break? What did you do to work through that situation?
So one of the things I did, and I know not everyone has the capacity to do this, is I took a second job. I decided that I had kind of learned everything I could during my day job. So I took a second job as a coding instructor during the evening. And when things still after that, weren't moving forward, I finally just went, look, you know what? I've got another offer. I've got an offer from somewhere else and I'd like to stay here if there's something you can offer to me. But, if not, I'm going to leave. And I was actually told from some of the management there, you'd kind of be a fool if you didn't take it because, to be honest with you and fair, we don't have anything else for you right now.
Sure. So you kind of use that to your advantage.
Yeah.
What are the top 3 characteristics of somebody in this field that is successful?
You have to be a lifelong learner. I mean, you have to be. That's always number one. The key is that you have to be a lifelong learner. This isn't, algebra where nothing changes over time. Coding regulations are changing, especially in our current climate, hour by hour, day by day. And if you're not committed to keeping up on the regulations, you're not going to be successful in this career. Now, that doesn't mean you have to keep up on every single thing that's going on completely in coding and compliance and HIM, but at least keep up with the stuff that's going on high level and the things that pertain to any specialties that you might be in. So if you're in orthopedics, definitely make sure that you're reading those orthopedic journals and keeping up with any changes in technology and coding and guidelines, your insurances, etc. The other thing is you have to be a self-motivated person. So you can't be someone who's just constantly wants to be spoon-fed the answers, that you just want to, oh, this op report's difficult. I'm just going to hand it off to, my expert person that I know and have them hash it out for me or explain it to me. You almost in a way need to learn, and not initially, but over time, learn to be your own consultant, learn how to make your own decisions. The key is if you can at least maybe figure out how to get those resources and then interpret the resources, that's really the key. But you have to, once you've at least gotten the information of where to get those resources, be self-motivated enough to look at them, go to them, and not just be looking for someone to give you the answers all the time, because that's not going to long-term get you anywhere. So the third thing is you have to have passion for what you do. So you have to love what you're doing. I mean, granted, medical coders have lots of good job stability and good pay and so forth. But if you don't like medical coding, you're not going to enjoy what you do, and you're not going to be successful because you're just not passionate about what you do. You know, there's a lot of careers out there where you can make good money. Real estate's one of them, but I don't like real estate, so I would never want to get a job in there, even if I could make more money, because that's not where my passion is. My passion is with medical coding and with finding ways to really just improve this industry and make it better for everyone, you know, that's involved.
Yes, definitely. I think those are really strong characteristics of somebody that is successful. So if you had the opportunity to travel back in time to the early days of your career, what are 3 pro tips that you would want your younger self to know?
I think the first thing I would want to know is how to get the right resources and how to research. Because when I started out as a coder, I was basically given books and that was it. Like, I didn't even know CPT Assisted existed. I didn't know the coding clinic existed. Like, I just thought it was straightforward. You open up the book, you pick the code, and that's the end of it. It took a long time before I realized the details of the regulations and that are behind that, the Federal Register and everything. So I would definitely go back and try to equip myself with some of the knowledge of those tools that do exist that were out there and I had no knowledge of. The second thing I would tell myself is make sure to not burn bridges. And it's not that I feel that I've intentionally burned bridges, but I feel like there's probably people that I've not spoken to in a while, or organizations that I kind of left and never followed up with again. And I worry sometimes that they take that as I burned the bridge. And it's not that I have any ill will towards anyone. I don't have time to worry about what people think of me from when I left my job or what have you. But I'm just so involved in the moment and moving forward that I forget to sometimes check back on some of those people that I've met along the way. I mean, for example, I'll be honest with you. I had one boss that I had some rough situations with on my last day working at that organization, and ran into that person at national conventions. I ran into that person at a local chapter seminar that I was speaking to, and she wouldn't even make eye contact with me. And I, for the life of me, don't understand why, because I don't hold grudges. I don't have time for it. There's no need for that kind of negativity. I mean, I don't hold anything against anyone. I'll talk to anyone, chit chat with you about whatever in the coding industry.
Right. It's a small world.
It is. It is absolutely a small world, and you can never burn bridges because, oh my gosh, I can't even tell you how many times I've thought I wasn't going to ever run into someone again, and then sure enough, in your industry, you do. You just do.
You totally do. You see them at that conference, and you're
yes.
like, oh.
Forgot about you.
Awkward.
And then the third thing I would go back and tell myself is that some of the bad times are going to be your biggest motivators, and you're going to need them to get that strength to keep moving forward and keep proving yourself.
Yes, I like that. Those are great pro tips. So we've all had a bad experience with a supervisor or boss, and I know you alluded to this a little bit with the professional low, but tell us about a bad boss or supervisor that you've had in your career and how you overcame the adversity that came along with that.
You know, I've been a boss before, and I can't say that I certainly as a boss did not have bad traits to me. I think every boss, no matter how amazing they are, have some bad boss tendencies. I've had bosses in the past that were amazing, knew everything, but they were micromanagers because they didn't know how to manage people any other way. But I think one thing that's always stuck in my mind is I remember I was in a situation once where I was having a one-on-one with my manager, and I don't even remember what we were talking about. And she was saying something to the tune of, oh, well, I know I'm a rough person to deal with, but it's okay. Like, you can still ask me questions and blah, blah, blah. And, is there anything else then you want to say? And I said, well, I just feel like I'm being told to sit down, shut up, and code. My boss lost it on me. I mean, completely lost it on me. Red in the face, screaming at me. How dare you? I sat in the hospital and I coded in the corner with the doctors and got yelled at and asked questions about RVUs and blah, 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 blah. And, I'm glad I didn't listen. I'm glad I'm glad I never sat down, shut up, and coded, because if I had, I wouldn't be making YouTube videos and on podcasts and writing articles and getting the amazing messages that I get from coders every day that are just so thankful for what I've put out there and what I've provided for them. And even if it's just things like, setting up my chapter meetings and hearing the feedback about, oh, we're so grateful that you were able to put together such a wonderful event for us. Like, that means so much to me. And it really proves that sometimes you just have to have some faith in yourself and what you're able to provide. And if some people don't understand your journey, that's okay, because it's not for them.
Yes, absolutely. I think we can all relate to that story. And the biggest takeaway is that you shouldn't believe what other people, say about you, because you're the only one that has control. So you get to control how far you want to go. And like you just said, you wouldn't be creating YouTube videos and really disrupting an industry in the way that we deliver education and content, and if you had listened to that boss.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with being a productivity coder. Absolutely not. If you want to sit down and code charts all day and then that's it, and you go off and do whatever your hobby or your passion is, that's fine. But that was not what I was after. And I think people just didn't quite get on board with that. They didn't get it. And that's fine, but I'm still moving forward and going through with what I need to.
So what are your top 3 pro tips for overcoming adversity as a coding professional?
So first, you have to give it time. Give it time and build yourself in silence, because sometimes people aren't going to understand exactly what it is you're trying to do. And sometimes people will try to, cut you down a little bit or go, well, why are you going to do that? Because that doesn't sound like you're going to get any money for getting that extra certification or what have you. So, give it time, work on yourself. Don't broadcast to everyone about every little move that you're making, because adversity is inevitable. It's going to be there. So as long as you're concentrating on you, working on yourself, and that's the second part, is don't worry about the haters. Focus on you and making you better. Believe in you. Use, if you need to, that quote unquote hater stuff to fuel your fire, but don't acknowledge them, and don't ever post about it on social media. I have seen so many posts from friends lately complaining about their job or their boss, and my jaw just drops. If you need to vent that, that's fine, but you do it in appropriate methods. You call up your friends or someone, that you can trust, but you don't ever post that on social media. I've seen some things lately that I'm like, oh my gosh, I almost want to call human resources on you. And then I see follow-up posts that people are like, I can't believe someone called up human resources on me. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I was kind of thinking about doing the same thing. And especially the third thing is you have to have that right outlook. Never see it as, a huge block that you can't get around. You have to see it as an opportunity to change, something that's going to make you better, make you adaptable, that you're going to, go into that cocoon and come out the butterfly, that you're going to change. And it's going to be, a dark period for a while, but you're going to morph and you're going to come out on top at the end of it.
Yes. Trust the process. It's all worth it. So I always enjoy your weekly YouTube videos, and sometimes you put out more than one, which is awesome. Tell us about all the new and exciting things you're currently working on at Contempo Coding.
So I am loving the YouTube channel right now. So I'm trying to bring all of the cool things that we see in other industries, other hobbies, things that are normal in like beauty blogging and knitting and tech reviews, and bring that kind of mode, that excitement into the medical coding field. I wish I could offer CEUs actually for my YouTube channel videos, and I'm trying to figure out ways right now that I can kind of make some of the education that I'm offering more exciting and YouTube-like, and maybe offer it as like an on-demand type of education. When I started out in medical coding, and you probably experienced this as well, a lot of our educations that we got, it was like, you dialed into the phone line and you had the printed out sheets of the slides.
And not much has changed.
So many times I can tell you I fell asleep. I'll admit it. I fell asleep during these webinars, and I got to a point that I'm like, I can do this better. I know I can do this better. So I finally got to a point where now I can do it. Like I have the capacity to do it. And they say, and you've probably heard these studies, the average person now has a shorter attention span than a goldfish. And that's not gonna change. So we need to adapt the way that we're educating that short attention span and try to work with it and keep it going. And I've always been inspired by people like Bill Bill Nye, who are still considered experts and they're still professional, but they make it cool. Like Bill Nye made science cool and he made it understandable. So right now I'm concentrating a lot of time on some of the on-demand education sessions in my YouTube channel. My big goal is to get my YouTube channel monetized by the end of the year so that I can still continue it as a free resource. Everyone gets to get that cool education and the tutorials and tips, but then I'll get some ad revenues to support it. So I get money, but everyone else gets it for free. But to do that, I actually need 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watched hours. So that's why it's really important right now to like and subscribe and share those YouTube videos, because it helps support that goal, because I need to get those hours. I think I'm going to probably hit the subscribership within the next 2 months, but those watched hours are really what are holding me back. So, I'm going to keep putting content out there for everyone, and definitely make sure that you watch them and share and like, because that's going to help me out. It's going to help me get, cool cameras and stuff to make the channel even better and be able to provide more resources to everyone.
Your content is next level. It's so good. I know how much work it is to put that stuff together, and you actually have to do a lot more work than I have to do, because you have to be on camera and lighting and makeup and hair. And so my hat's off to you. You are incredible and very talented.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. And, I love getting all of the feedback from everyone. And I definitely love getting to the questions. God, I wish I had time to get through all of them, but I just, I don't. There's only so many hours in a day. So I'm trying to work on having features of questions. That's something I'm looking at doing potentially in the future, and maybe even a couple of video interviews. So there's going to be a lot more coming to the channel that I'm really excited about.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time to join us today, Victoria.
Oh, thank you so much, Toni. And you have an awesome week. And everyone listening, you also have an awesome week and an awesome day.
So to learn more about Victoria, be sure to check out Contempo Coding's YouTube channel. To never miss another episode, make sure to subscribe, comment, and share. So it's time for this week's coding pro tip, and it's brought to you by Contempo Coding, which is an on-demand educational resource provider created for coders by coders. They specialize in affordable coding certification prep courses to help you accelerate in your career. Right now, they're offering $100 off the Certified Risk Adjustment Coding Prep course when you order through our affiliate website. Visit our website, alphacodingexperts.com, and head over to the Deals and Discounts tab for a link to take advantage of this absolute steal of a deal. If you have a coding-related question and would like it to be featured in one of our coding pro tips, please reach out to me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. So one of our listeners from Colorado reached out. Hi, Toni. I really enjoyed your Modifier 57 episode and need this information now more than ever, since I work in an orthopedic practice and our surgery backlog is huge. So if the patient had been scheduled for a hip replacement prior to the COVID-19 pandemic and the surgery was decided at that time, can we bill for the pre-op H&P by the PA since the surgery was decided over 3 months ago? So the answer to your question depends on the circumstances of the patient. But if the decision for surgery was already made and already determined and nothing has changed with the patient that would require an extensive workup review, or maybe looking at possibly not doing the surgery, or if the patient has identified risk factors. So it's all going to very much depend on what happens at that visit. But to answer your question, if the patient is being seen for a pre-op H&P, it doesn't matter that there was so much of a time gap between when the patient was scheduled for the surgery and when the patient is actually having the surgery. So to answer your question, no, the pre-op H&P would not be billable regardless of the time length between the decision for surgery and the actual surgery. So I hope that helps. So if you like what you're hearing, hit that subscribe button now so you never miss another episode. Also, be sure to drop us a rating and review on iTunes. We really appreciate your support. So this concludes today's episode. Until next week, thank you for listening to Alpha Coding Podcast. We'll see you next Monday.
For more information about medical coding and billing pro tips, including how to hire Alpha coding experts, follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or visit our website at www.alphacodingexperts.com.